We mentioned we saw Glenn Thomas last night, Nebraska's quarterback coach. He's probably the one guy that doesn't have to worry a whole lot about recruiting because of this guy. Headline number 3, Trae Taylor is already having an impact in recruiting, and he's only a 2027 prospect. But by having him in place this early, of the quarterbacks committed nationally, he's the highest ranked 2027 QB currently committed to a school.
Wow.
So that comes with some cachet, and we've seen him already, really work the phones and reach out to a lot of top 2027 players. Brian Munson had an article. Tay Ellis from Fort Worth Crowley is one of the more recent ones he's reached out to.
Yeah, Tay Ellis is, this is a kid in Fort Worth, Texas, who had 56 receptions for 800 yards as a sophomore. Now, you're more familiar with the recruiting world and the high school world than I am, but I've got to think a kid in Fort Worth that has 800 receiving yards as a sophomore is pretty good. And read what he tells Brian Munson. Trey's commitment definitely opened my eyes more to Nebraska. This is what Tay Ellis told Brian. We've built a solid relationship, and knowing someone I trust is heading there makes it easier to picture myself doing the same. It's pretty powerful, right?
No doubt.
And Trey Taylor is the goods. I had a conversation with his coach last Friday, a week ago today, Jason McKee, who's a former NFL player. And man, he painted a good picture of this kid. A really good picture. He said what's going to separate Trey Taylor is his film study and work ethic. Well, you'd be able to associate with this. This is McKee talking, Jason McKee, who's the 6th-year head coach at Carmel Catholic, which is a northern suburb of Chicago. He says it's going out in the rain and snow, which he does all the time, and throwing to his receivers. Anybody can go out there when it's 70 degrees, but can you do it in Chicagoland when it's 10 degrees out at 6 a.m.? That's when your competitors are sleeping. That's the mentality that Taylor has. Then he does these Zoom calls with his quarterbacks coach, 5 a.m. Zoom calls 4 days a week. And that is breaking down defenses. And I don't mean just opponent defenses, just defenses in general, breaking down coverages, breaking down defenses in their entirety. He comes to understand, this all sounds like Dylan, by the way, to me. They come to understand each defensive player's responsibility. This is a sophomore in high school. This is a kid that wants to be great.
God, how about the dedication of the coach to get on there every day, too?
That 5 a.m. Zoom calls.
Now, I will say, too, the one advantage here, like when Dylan Raiola committed to Nebraska was never really able to capitalize on this at the high school recruiting ranks because Dylan committed so late.
December of
2024.
Right. So,
or 23, excuse me.
And then he arrived when?
January of 24.
January.
So there was no real recruiting advantage of that cycle.
No.
And, if Dylan Raiola would have committed to Nebraska, let's just say March of 2022. 3.
Oh, 3. Okay. March.
When Rule first got here, because Dylan was not going to commit to Frost.
You're right.
And stick with the commit. So if he would have committed to Rule in March of 2023,
you get a run up.
Then all of a sudden he's your best recruiter.
Right.
And that was the one thing they never really got to capitalize with his commitment, because generally a commit like Dylan Raiola does generate a lot more traction with high school recruits.
Right. It puts like a guy like Trey Taylor, and it seems like he's embraced this. It puts a little responsibility on your shoulders to recruit, right? You about have to do it. Sean, do you envision Nebraska bringing him to campus at times?
Yeah, or just inviting him for weekends and he strikes me as the kind of guy that's going to want to be here for anything where there's going to be potential recruits.
He seems to have that sort of personality, right? He's got a ebullient personality. So yeah, this is a hey.
I could see Dayton also, though. I think
Dayton's like that too.
I think Dayton and Trey are going to want to be here together to help recruit for Nebraska.
And I've talked to, who I've talked about this with is Zach Taylor. And he once mentioned to me the importance, and I don't know. I'm not even necessarily sure I 100% agree with it, but he said it's important to have a quarterback with a great personality that can connect with a lot of people. But now I bet you can name quarterbacks who didn't have that. But he says it's important. And Dayton, by the way, we don't talk about Dayton that much, but Dayton's like that too. You've met Dayton. I've met Dayton. Dayton has a really good personality, like very open, very just like a nice kid. Looks you in the eye. Dylan's like that too. I think Dylan's a little more reserved than Dayton. Would you say that?
Yeah, Dayton. I mean, Dayton's a little bit more. I mean, because he
Would you say
honestly had to step into the spotlight later.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan was in the spotlight immediately as a freshman. And, you know, if you're a younger brother like Dayton, you've got pretty big expectations now after what your brother just did.
Yeah, but I mean, Dayton seems to take it all in stride.
Well, and Dayton was not able to start until his junior year because Dylan was the starting quarterback when Dayton was a sophomore.
Right.
And so most nationally ranked high quarterbacks start when they're sophomores, but not when you're at a place like where Dayton was at.
That's true. The bottom line to me is both Dayton and Dylan and Trey Taylor are guys you want to be around. They're very easy to talk to. They're willing to recruit. There's a willingness that's really important. There's one other thing I wanted to say about Trey Taylor is that McKee, his coach, Jason McKee is a bottom line sort of hard charging coach. And he made it very clear that Taylor has plenty of room to improve. He said, our coaching staff, McKee said this, our coaching staff looks at last season, and he said, we didn't think Trey played that well, to be honest. He said, he's just scratching the surface of how good he can be, and we tell him that all the time. We're brutally honest with him. He said he probably gets yelled at the most. The picture that he paints is beautiful. Now, the one thing that also struck me was they were only 4-7 last year. You want to see him win a little bit. That program's been good. They were 10-2 the previous year, but 4-7 with him as the head, with him as the starter. So you kind of want to see that flip this year.